our December demo day, last demo day of the year. We're going to get things started with Alex, who will show us quite a bit of additional web functionality. And then at the end, I'll close with a few new .NET Client updates that are in pre-release right now and should be included in the next public release. So I'll send it over to you, Alex. So we'll get started with some of the production module updates.
Share my screen here. Yeah, so we've got a decent handful of changes that were made to the production. So to start off, I'm going to go over to control here. And we're going to start in the web tab. This is a new tab that has been added. And this allows you to select a list of lookups to display for the work order details screen. This works very similarly to how the inventory module does when you go into a parts detail screen. So I've got a couple work orders here and switch over to one. You can see now we've got a check issue and a shop transactions tab. And I open the screen here. So that matches what we have selected here. So you can go here and these are all lookups. So it'll load these tables. So we've got a shop transactions listing here for this work order. Switch over to the other one. We don't have shop transactions here, but we do have check issue, some data there. So you can add any number of these you want as long as there's a lookup on the work order fdict for it. You can add it here and maintain it there. So lots of extra display that doesn't necessarily need to go through us to be maintained. Then we're going to hop over to production. So we've got a lot of changes here in production. To start, I've got a little bit of data here. We've got a new export feature. So this lets you pick which days you want to export from the days that you have displayed. So you can only select one if you want. You can select them all. And then gives you the export option. You can select which columns you want to show. We're going to show them all here. And what happens if you've got multiple dates is they'll all be grouped here into the same table, but you'll have the production date column. So it'll show you which day each of those are. You can see that the highlighting actually carried through here. So if you want to print, that will carry through to the print option. If you want, have a color printer or whatever, so you can maintain that. When we export to a CSV file, so that's not going to maintain your formatting and coloring. So that's just a simple comma separated value file, but you can also just export to that. And there we've got our data. There's Copilot in Excel now. Additionally, some other things to go over here in WO control. If you go to the scheduling tab here, we now let you select what lookup you want to use to display the data here. Originally, this was always just a single production board lookup that was defined. Actually, I think not here. Maybe it was just default hard-coded. Oh, wait, no. Actually, I think it was originally maybe here. Yep, okay. Sorry. It was originally defined, that you have one level of production board lookup that you can set here, and that'll apply to all of them, all scheduling groups. However, if you want to say, one scheduling group should see a slightly different view, you can now select that here. So this will override what is set in the production scheduling tab if that is set. You can do the same thing with unscheduled orders, and so we'll go over to that tab in a little while, but you can do the same thing for unscheduled orders. And additionally, you can now restrict what users are allowed to see what scheduling groups here. And so now the way this works is if a user is defined here, then only the users shown in this list will see this scheduling group in their dropdown. If no users are defined, so we can scroll down here, say the liquid flavor group, I do still see that. That's because no users are defined, so it's available to everybody. That maintains a bit of backwards compatibility and saves a whole lot of configuration if you do actually just want everybody to be able to see something. So we have those options there. And additionally now we have a previous week and a next week navigation button here. So if you just want to scroll through the weeks for the scheduling board, you can do that. And what actually happens is now both the scheduling group and your start and end dates carry over not only to the production board, but over to the scheduling tab. So I can see with the metal fabrication, we've got these dates. And if I were to go up to November 30th through December 6th and hop back over to the production board, you can see that those dates persist. So that lets you kind of maintain a consistent view through both of them, and so you're looking at the same data with different views here. And then finally, we're not going to go into too much detail here, just it's a bit of a more complicated situation here. But you can, when you click on an item here in this, you see this pop-up overlay. And also if you were to select an item from the scheduling board, from the chart itself, when you get this display, this is now customizable through formsdef.e. So we have a specific name of a formsdef that if you create that, we will use whatever you have defined there instead of this standard view. So that gives you a lot of customizability there, and it will still try to persist a lot of the same functionality through. So if there's work center restrictions for a specific operation, we will persist that through if you display the work center field on your formsdef form. So that provides a lot more customizability and flexibility there. Okay, so next we will go to a upcoming feature that we're waiting to release. We're just kind of making sure that all of our integrations have time to make some changes to support this, because this is kind of a bit of a breaking change in how configurations are used for custom fields within point of sale. In the cart, we have the option to display custom fields here, and then if you were to expand this, you'll get some more custom fields that you'll see. This was originally driven by FDICT specifications, and basically if an FDICT field was between field numbers 80 and 100, it would be considered a custom field, and then if it was also controlled by the line item, it would be displayed here. We wanted to make an update to that because we wanted to make it a little more flexible and also not necessarily require that a field be custom for it to be displayed here. So now that is controlled through MRK control. And I didn't select the tab. Cart. Here in the cart tab here, parts of the cart tab, you've got an additional cart fields. And so now you can select any of the SO FDICT fields from here. You probably want to make sure that they're based on the field, the LI field, the line item field, but you don't necessarily need to know, and you can pick whatever you'd like to display here. So a lot more customizability, flexibility here. Things don't need to be a custom field for it to be displayed, but they can be. So that provides a lot more of a feature here. And finally, another upcoming
One more
feature.
thing there.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
We can also now trigger validation on changes to those additional fields. So
Yes,
previously, if you were in the cart and you made a change to a field, we never actually hit the host to do any validation until you made all of your changes and saved them. But now we can trigger that on change of a particular field. So if you wanted to have validation on, say, that custom date field, that it had to be in a certain range or something like that, that can now be implemented on the host side. When you make a change, it'll post it to the host.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. And then finally, we've also got some in-progress work that we're working on the accounting module to make that a much more user-friendly and powerful experience. So I'll hop over to that. And so here now we actually have a search text box for payables and receivables, and this will let you enter invoice ID or other information here. So if I wanted to say only search for Bell here, I can do that. And so now only items with customers that have Bell in the name will be provided here. So that gives you an ability to kind of narrow your search down a lot more than having to necessarily select a time bucket and then, filter on a customer or something. You can still select a time bucket though, an aging bucket. And then say if we were to open this item and close it, you're like, oh, I wish I still had that open, didn't mean to close it, you lost it. We do now have the recently viewed table as well. So you can go back to anything you've seen in the past and you can open it back up and this should be the 10 most recent items that you viewed. And we do have the same functionality for payables as well. So should be a consistent experience here that you can use either way here. So yeah, and I think we're still working on a little bit of a cleanup here and narrowing down exactly how the searches want to behave when you've selected a time and aging bucket, and then you do a search, whether or not you maintain that timing bucket or not. So we're still progressing through this and doing a bit of testing and user experience work here, but this is definitely should be coming soon.
Yeah, a couple other user experience things there. We're making sure that if you have a combination of AR and AP items open, say you were viewing an AP item and then you return back to the main view, it will return you to the AP table rather than the AR table. So there was a lot of
Yep,
just odd behavior that was going on there that's been cleaned up here. So
absolutely.
like
And you'll
Alex
notice,
said, still work in progress, but yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
absolutely. And you'll notice as when I hopped over, maybe to a receivable back. Oh, that did send me back to payables. I guess I was most recently on payables before going to that tab. But you'll see that this search doesn't rerun, so it doesn't keep reperforming the search every time you hop back to your dashboard. So you can just keep looking at your search results from before. You're not going to lose those all the time. So that'll be nice.
That's a change we intend to make in tickets as well, which I think everyone will be happy with. So if you do a search in tickets, open a ticket to see the detail and then return back to the search results, it won't research and change your sort order and your filters. So
Yeah.
that will be coming soon as well. Okay, I think that's it for the web side, right, Alex?
Yep.
Okay, so I will take over the screen share and show a few new things coming in the .NET client. All right, so these are all still in a pre-release build, so not quite available to be interacted with yet, but the first item is the ability to paste a list of data into a grid. As long as that grid contains a single text box, you can now select a list of, say, account numbers and paste it into the first field in that grid, and it will paste all of the data in there. This still triggers all validations, so it will do the after input event for data that you enter there. Let's make a quick change. So normally the behavior here would be whatever you paste in there, it's going to trigger a lookup. It will also warn you if you're going to overwrite data. So it is telling me it's going to overwrite data in 3 rows. I say yes. The first value I pasted was test. So it did the lookup for test, and it's now letting me choose a result from that lookup. And then it pasted all of the other values in below that. So it should be a nice, just quality of life thing where you want to be able to paste a group of data in. Couple other changes here. So if I hop over to cust.e, one issue that we had that came up at a client is system delimiters were not being filtered. So if I were to paste in a string that contains system delimiters, it just didn't work. So I need to review that a bit. But so the first time I pasted it, didn't do it. Second time, it saw that there were invalid characters and it stripped it out, and then it warned me that it did it. Let's try that one more time. Yeah. So it shouldn't allow you to paste any value marks, sub-value marks, text marks, anything that the system sees as a delimiter, because that just causes data issues as that's sent back to the host. So that's a change. We also made some improvements. There's an option where when you click in a field, it can automatically select the text. Previously, when you enabled that, you couldn't then click into the text and set your cursor in a certain position. You only had the option to select the text. So now that's resolved. So as you're clicking into a field, it can automatically select the text if you wanted to copy that out. But then if you click within the field, it maintains the position that you selected. And then finally, you can now paste into a field. So previously, whether or not you had the auto selection of text, if you tried to paste within an existing string, it would just overwrite the full string that you had in there. So now you can paste within the string. And we also allow for a Control-Z to work. So if you pasted it into a string, pretty standard functionality, but that didn't work before either. Now, the one caveat there is if we have to modify the string that you pasted, so if you pasted text in it that contained delimiters and we removed it, it's like I found another bug. If you paste text that we have to modify, then the Control-Z does not work in that situation. But otherwise, it should. So yeah, a couple quality of life things there. And then Andrew, not to call you out, but I think you had a couple things that you wanted to mention as well. More host side changes.
Yeah. There were some. I looked at the mod reports for the past month. You know, holiday has been a little light as far as standard product development, but there've been some quality of life improvements that have been made. Just kind of wanted to highlight them a little bit for everybody. One of the big ones is in screens or forms. There's a setting to make a field required. Generally, we discouraged use of it because it would get users stuck in a endless loop until they entered something in, whether it was valid or not. So if I'm an SOE and I hit enter, working on a new one, and I enter this company field and hit enter to go away, an entry is required, cool. If I hit OK, it now lets me out of it. So the user is notified that, hey, that field was required, and it doesn't return you back to it. If it returned me back to it like it did in previous releases, you just have to, you are forced to enter something in there, right? So this is allowing users to kind of move past required fields if they want to enter something first, right? That's a quality of life improvement made in ACE. That way you're not
that requirement is still enforced on save, though, correct? So if you didn't ultimately enter the required field, it still forces you to eventually.
Yes, the routines should be checking that, right? Because if we're using proper posting routines and whatnot when we're developing these, we're checking for all that with the fdict as it's marked required there, right? So it's the save routine is still honoring that stuff and will throw errors if you don't enter it, but now we're just not locking the user in the UI to have to enter it in right the second before moving on to do something else. That is one. The other one to just highlight is a change made in production. STE5 is work order completion reversals. This was earlier in the month. Previous releases, this is an M3 change that requires a full Rover upgrade for customers to see. But you could only do a full reversal of this. So if you did a completion for 100 items and you want to do reversal, it would have to be for the full 100 items. You can now do partial completions. So you don't need to do, if you're only reversing half of what you did, you can do that now. You don't have to reverse 100 and then complete 50. So just like I said, no quality of life improvements there. Again, M3 upgrade. The first change I showed was an ACE upgrade, so it's easier to get. And those are the two kind of quality of life changes on the back end I wanted to highlight.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay, I think that's about it, unless anyone had questions. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us, and Happy New Year.